Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and yesterday I saw a trending video that really made me want to puke in my mouth, quite frankly. I've been a huge fan of George Carlin for quite some time. In fact, I saw him on his final tour probably less than a year before he died. Life is Worth Losing is probably one of my favorite of his stand-up comedy bits, but I mean, he was a staple on HBO for so long, and progressively more and more and more, it was about politics. And you saw that even in his comedy in the 70s and then throughout the 80s, but post 9/11, I always thought he was something special. And to see this ad, Mr. Niko House, where it was only one side of the coin, was really upsetting to me because I don't mind if you put Trump in there. You could put, I'd say 95, maybe 100% of those people in there. But show the other side of the story. Where's James Clapper? Where's John Brennan? You know, I don't like Bill Clinton or Barack Obama either, to be quite honest.
Or their savior, James Comey.
Yeah, where are these people? And to turn it into a partisan ad was just over the top for me. So I saw that you had said something similar. And obviously, you're more on the left end of the spectrum. And I love the new Twitter tag right now. For those that don't know, Joe Biden is a segregationist.
Yeah.
Oh,
I let people know.
Yeah, and no, a lot of people don't know. And that's what drives me nuts. They're just like, you're a bigot. And I'm like, what are you talking about? This guy spoke at 4 separate Klansmen's funerals. He gave eulogies to these people.
Not only was he a damn racist and a segregation, but he was obnoxious about it. He was actually obnoxious, which is like, it's crazy to think that in the 90s, somebody could be obnoxious about being a racist and still be a presidential candidate within that, you know, the Democratic Party, the quote unquote leftist party, you know, 80 years later. But here we are. So
we're here.
Yeah, man, I agree.
Yeah. So we're going to get into all of it. I don't know that we'll play the actual bit because I don't want a copyright strike, but I think I'm going to play it in the background with no sound as we kind of talk so you guys can check it out yourself. I want to remind everybody, I am fully demonetized on this platform. I have been deemed as harmful content. We're now, almost 3 months ago. We did it on air. Yeah, almost 3 months ago on air now. We actually appealed it after waiting for a month and shamed them while we appealed it because it's that ridiculous, and still haven't heard anything back. Don't really expect to. Remember, all the docs are free in the playlist section for as long as I have my channel. Thumbs it up, subscribe, and share. Both Niko House and I are on Rokfin, which we will get into later because I really enjoy that platform, and it transcends this false left-right paradigm and gives voices like ours permission to say what everybody's thinking anyway. But you can also follow Niko right here at Niko CSFB. And this is the ad we're talking about, Niko. So let's start playing it as we chat. You know, first of all, you know, it gives you that edgy R rating. And I saw it trending on Twitter right out of the gates. It's the Confederate flag, bro. Right? And this couple, it's like, what did they do? Listen, there's so much confusion. Like, yeah, you know what? Jeff Bezos is a bad guy. So is Peter Thiel. So is Elon Musk. We were having like a private DM back and forth.
We're having a conversation about that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is that evil knows no party, in my opinion.
Evil knows no party. And I always say there's only one color that evil is concerned with, and that's generally green. You know, they might take different avenues to achieve the same goal. But like you said, man, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, a lot of these guys, I don't know if people have kind of caught on to the pattern, which we were discussing briefly yesterday, but they're not billionaires. They're mega billionaires after being failed businessmen prior. Not like, I went through the growing pains of growing a successful business. No, they're not even Oprah rich. They're Oprah, but like, if there were 8 more Oprahs and she was a white guy, like that's basically the type of wealth we're talking about accruing. And you don't accrue that naturally. There is somebody, in this case, Incutel, which is the venture capitalist or vulture capitalist firm that literally isn't even trying to hide, right? They're right in Arlington, Virginia. You can go to their website, right? That's a special type of evil, man. And when you're looking at Jeff Bezos, who you know, he was responsible for obviously he got money to buy the Washington Post, but he also was responsible for Google Earth. What was Amazon before the government invested into it? It was a failed company.
It was books that nobody was going for. Books nobody was going for. And you know, that's a great point, because one of the things you hammer home all the time is that the Central Intelligence Agency long took over the media. But what they don't understand is that same apparatus of the CIA post World War II, after it was made out of the OSS and paperclip and what forms into DARPA out of the Department of Energy, that's all interconnected, man. And that's that extra level of Central Intelligence Agency where they've got us arguing on whether or not we should regulate Google as a telecom company, or a utility, right?
Telecommunication, like utility company.
Yeah, utility company. And that's a false argument, because Google is in bed with NASA, and it's not just in space travel, it's in quantum computing and artificial intelligence. It owns the first and second largest, the second platform being this, search engines in the world, and the first or second largest, depending on how you measure it, operating system on the largest spy device ever created and known to man. It is not.
And just coincidentally, it also happens to be the largest search. And isn't that just a weird coincidence? How there was Yahoo, and Yahoo was like untouchable at the time. The commercials were everywhere. There was no conception of a world where Yahoo wasn't the dominant. And then Google came out of literally nowhere. And you know what else that happened with, Jason? Remember MySpace? Remember how there was never going to be anything greater than MySpace? Like, if we're being objective, like nobody thought that was going to happen, because there was a lot of competition out there at the time. Tag and other blackpeoplemeet.com, stuff like that. And out of nowhere, Facebook just takes over. And what's even funnier about that is, okay, cool, maybe the interface was better. That's what people will claim. Except for then there was a period where Facebook was an utter failure, and Twitter demolished them. This was before the Saudis took it over. And they were still profitable beyond belief. And Zuckerberg was still a mega billionaire. So why didn't Twitter take over Facebook in the same way, like just business-wise, that we saw Facebook take over MySpace? And once again, why are we just seeing this consistent pattern of companies that are literally nothing? The people who are behind the companies have no business skill, no business background, and yet they're able to multiply their non-profitable business into $1 billion conglomerate. And it's like I said, it's the intelligence community, and they buy those people because every now and then they'll step out of line. Because Musk tried to step out of line before, and you saw what they basically did to his company until he got back in order. They were about to make him broke.
Well, are you talking about the stock market stuff? See, with Musk, I think it's one of those things where there's a little bit of pushback, but I mean, he's their transhumanist guy. I want to get there in a minute, but everything you just said is so true on how they build these guys up even when they're not profitable. And I want to bring it back even a little bit further. If you think about it, Bill Gates, who's now here to reimagine education in New York with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. I don't know when we gave him that job. I just did an hour-plus watch-along with his interview over at CBS, where he's literally telling us, well, the vaccine doesn't have to work. And if it does work, we're hoping it not only maybe not work against you getting it, but maybe working if you don't die. Okay, well, you weren't going to die in most cases anyway. 2 shots minimum so far. 2 shots minimum, and we're closed down till 2022. He said all these things. I never elected this guy. He's supposed to reimagine education here, and he did the same damn thing for Apple back in the day. A lot of people forget this, but Microsoft actually gave money to Apple to keep them afloat in the late 90s to make the appearance of competition as those antitrust suits came into play. They eventually get thrown out, and that's kind of where Bill Gates picks up that pet project of I just want to say, an outward eugenics operation at this point. I mean, to force vaccinate, he said,
right.
I mean, 7 billion people. And that's the other thing. Guess what, guys? Doesn't matter what color you are. Doesn't matter what gender you identify as.
Well, that's in Africa. Let's be honest, because Bill Gates does like to test out his vaccines in Africa.
I'm talking about for this one. I'm talking about for this one.
This one. Oh, no. In America, this particular vaccine, nah, you're screwed, bro. Everybody. Like, if you take that vaccine, there is no possible, just like by the basic laws of the scientific method, say if they did everything else correct, and this is under the assumption that they got everything right the first time, which science has literally never done. Mm-hmm. You are unable to do the most important part, which is now replicate it over time and see the effects over time. There hasn't been any time, and the vaccine has just gotten done. Mm-hmm. So basically you're saying, screw the scientific method. We're going to do what we want to anyway. And at that point, there's nothing conspiratorial about how idiotic that is. And that the only reason you would push such an agenda is if you are directly profiting off of it somehow.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. And it bothers me because there's, number one, I'm happy people are talking about it, right? There's this awakening to Bill Gates out there. People are like, all right, hey, maybe this guy isn't the best thing since breakfast. But then people contact me like out of nowhere. They just seen my channel. They're like, you need to get on this anti-Gates thing. And I'm like, dude, I got like a 20-minute segment in my 2013 documentary on this guy. I'm like, what are you talking about getting on the bandwagon? I've been talking about this guy for over a decade. You know, you talked about Oprah and billionaires. He was part of that 2000, it was either 8 or 9 meeting with him, Michael Bloomberg, David Rockefeller, Ted Turner, and Warren Buffett, where
Bloomberg is another one of them, man. Oh my God.
Where they portrayed them as the super best friends. A lot of people say, Jason, that just can't be true. They wouldn't have portrayed them as superheroes if they were meeting about modern day eugenics. I'm like, yeah, it's true. It's 100% true. I'll show you the clip. Because I'm live, it won't let me go to it. I usually have the feature video there. But in Invisible Empire in 2010, they literally cut out their faces Photoshop style. Oprah and all of them. I think she was on Wonder Woman. And they popped them out into the screen as the super best friends for justice. And just like you said, they love to seem to use Africa as this testing ground for these types of vaccinations and other programs.
Yeah, I mean, that's why, if Oprah is one, people have to understand like the history behind specifically using Africa as a test program or as testing grounds for this type of stuff. So for those of you who are curious, yes, Rothschild's name is involved, of course, 100%. But in all seriousness, it didn't actually start with Rothschild first. It started with Cecil Rhodes. He's the brain behind the entire operation, and he was not shy about his goal. Now, Rothschild was one of his financiers. However, Cecil, if I recall, had control over the media by the time it was all said and done. Cecil Rhodes sought out to do one thing and one thing. He created a secret council. Once again, it wasn't... You know where I got this information from, Jason?
Where's that?
The New York Times in a 1902 copy. Deadass. It was printed. People were like, yo, y'all not going to pay attention to this? But he was very clear what his goal was. He said, I want an Anglo, like a British Anglo-dominated world. And he used South Africa as a testing ground, which is why South Africa, now they don't only speak English, they specifically speak in a British Empire accent. And Cecil Rhodes was the one responsible for the apartheid. He then said, oh, wow, we can do this. And they began working with America to bring them back into the fold. But he knew that they wouldn't go willingly, one, because, America's egotistical. And he knew that it would take some grand event to bring them all together. And of course, you know what the event was. It was World War I that Cecil Rhodes literally completely manufactured himself.
I'm so glad you bring it up.
But he worked with Rothschild, JP Morgan Chase. They bankrolled the Bull Moose Party. Teddy Roosevelt. They bankrolled him so that Woodrow Wilson would win because Roosevelt split the vote.
I know.
And they had Woodrow Wilson in their pocket the entire time. And so, but that whole thing started in Africa. Whenever we got brought into World War II, Great Britain basically ordered us to protect their African colonies. It's this thing, man. It's because of there's a lot of reasons, right? Minerals, resources. Africa has a lot of untapped ground there, and not enough infrastructure necessarily to fight that. So it's frustrating, but that's history. It's not, once again, it's not conspiratorial. These are facts, documented facts that get scattered through different stories. And so when you bring them all together and give some clarity to it, people freak out because they're like, how could we never have seen this? You weren't paying attention, I guess.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Cecil Rhodes for a few reasons. Number one, he's also the godfather of these roundtable groups. These organizations outside of government that eventually will influence and lobby government. You look at even the Rhodes Scholarship and who they've produced over the years. But Cecil Rhodes himself, and I'm glad you brought him up, because I thought that Oxford taking down Cecil Rhodes' statue in the proper manner, where unfortunately it did take several years of protests and petitions to do so. They did it. They got it done in the right way. You know what I mean? They didn't just go out there and tear down these statues. Well, I would just say,
I just couldn't believe they actually did it. I'm not going to lie to you. I was surprised.
I was pretty surprised too. But again, doing it in the right manner, not forgetting our history, pointing to this guy, because a lot of people never even learned this history in the first place. As much as I hate, say, an Albert Pike, I still don't want him torn down in the middle of the streets and burned and pissed on, because that's still our history. People should know, hey, wait a minute, this guy's one of the guys that originated the Klan. Yeah, he was a high-level Mason. There's a lot more behind Albert Pike than just, he's a Confederate, we need to take him down. And
I believe we have to take these statues and acknowledge them and put them in museums.
Thank you.
We don't need to be glorifying them. They just need to be tools of history. Yeah. I agree.
Just the history you laid down on Cecil Rhodes right there. All right, let's get these statues down. Let's put somewhere on the campus where you can see what it used to look like, and then why this guy got taken down and what he was truly responsible for. Isn't that the right way to do it? It just seems like, for instance, we're already selectively enforcing it. You talked about Teddy Roosevelt for a second. Now, on one hand, Teddy Roosevelt thought he was doing the right thing because he thought they were both corrupt. He didn't realize he's being used as a pawn. If you look at that, he's the first third-party president to run. That sets that precedent that one day maybe that dream...
Oh, actually, I think that Lincoln was.
Did Lincoln run third-party too?
Yeah, Lincoln was third-party. And he had to build his way up. Yeah, it was like a big deal.
Was it one of the Masons or
Douglas was trying to avoid him for a while. Huh?
Was that the Mason and anti-Mason party back in the day? Because I remember when they came up.
I wish I could remember the name. I wish I could remember the name of it. But basically, that's the reason why Douglas was avoiding him, was because he was able to, because Lincoln was a no-name from a third party.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So now that we're talking presidencies and third parties and all that stuff, for me right now, there is no third-party vote, just like the last time there wasn't a third-party vote for me. Like Gary Johnson disappointed me. I had interviewed him probably like 6-7 years before that election, and just the way it was obvious, he seemed to be in there to kind of get Hillary Clinton into office. And believe me, Hillary Clinton, not great. Donald Trump, not great. But
Hillary Clinton is evil.
Yeah, well,
she's evil incarnate.
Yeah, I'm glad you could say that, because it wasn't even. I was like, look, if I had to choose on all the establishment people, it probably would have been Rand Paul, but he's out. Trump's got to be better than this woman, and I voted for Trump. When I thought I had a protest vote back in the day, I voted for Cynthia McKinney in the Green Party, for instance.
Love Cynthia McKinney. Love Cynthia McKinney.
Oh, me too. Is there a third? I was hoping Jesse was going to run, or at least give me that vote.
Nope. I asked you a question. No, I don't know, Kyle. You're literally knee deep in research all the time, so I completely understand. But I covered from the time it started really until the end of the election. The Green Party rigged the nomination for Howie Hawkins, and as we began to dig, I was starting to see certain patterns that had emerged that I had seen from people who I've uncovered as being CIA or intelligence assets, and I don't think that Howie himself is actually an intelligent asset, but he's an idiot, and he's a cheater, and he's self-aggrandizing. However, the story that oftentimes didn't get told, as everybody was focusing on their energy on Howie Hawkins, I always think, because I have been involved in politics long enough, to say, hold the hell up. So y'all telling me they had a guy who was polling at 60%, young guy, Latino, used to be a rabbi till he got excommunicated for calling out Israel's supremacy. Check every block you need. This dude had it. And once they got that poll within the Green Party, some pack propped up Howie instead. And I was like, that's peculiar. Then I come to find out it was one of those people. I don't know if you're familiar with him. His name is Kevin Zeese. And I was familiar with him because in the left, he was basically celebrated as this anti-war, anti-imperialist guy. But I had always been it was always really suspect, right? Because the dude was able to set up and knock down nonprofits like that, bro. I mean, I've done that before, and it's not an easy thing to do if you're doing it correct way, in the correct way. But then I remembered that I don't know if you remember the situation at the Venezuelan embassy, whenever the people had locked themselves in the embassy.
Okay.
So Kevin Zeese was one of those people, and he was like the last activist there. And it was just bizarre to me because given the tensions between us and Venezuela, and obviously given the show that the administration has to put on, they were threatening to throw him in jail on felony charges. And we never figured out how he was able to get out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Never talked about it.
It's just so weird. Just weird like
yeah.
that.
And Howie Hawkins is pro Russiagate. I don't know if you know that. He attacked Tulsi for visiting Assad to, I don't know, maybe stop his people from suffering so we can all get along, because the kids were literally like running up to her and begging her while she was in Syria. It was a great experience for her, but it was sad. And people have no idea how hard that situation is. And yet Howie, running as the quote unquote Green Party candidate, was mad at Tulsi for that.
That's super weird. Again, the conversation was a necessary one. If they act like Assad is some third world dictator, no, he's a second, and probably would have been at this point a first world had we not interfered.
He was first world
plus.
Before we destroyed. Yeah. That was his problem, man. See, he would. That's why Nancy Pelosi and them went to Syria. I'm sure you heard about that trip that they made.
Yeah,
Nancy Pelosi and was it Chuck Schumer? It was her and one other person.
It wasn't McCain at that point. McCain was over there before everything happened as well. But you're talking left side.
But I'm talking about very specifically. Yeah. I want to say it was 2011. They went to go visit Syria, and the next thing you know, 2012. That's when the humanitarian aid started.
Yeah,
because Syria was doing very well, and they were probably going to flourish even more so because of just Assad being very savvy and being very cultured, and his wife as well. So. But when you're looking at what the Green Party is supposed to be, when you're looking at an ample it's so much opportunity here, bro. We're looking at Trump, who is really. I'm kind of surprised at how much he's dropping the ball here. Like, he just has not been that good.
What is your opinion? Since you brought Trump up, what's your opinion on his Bernie-like policy in the executive order out of nowhere? I mean, have you noticed it's been pretty
the
silent?
Prescription drug one?
Yeah.
So Trump is interesting because he actually has been better on healthcare, like on his personal desires for like healthcare, than the majority of the Democratic Party and almost everybody in the Republican Party. I remember one time he actually used Medicare for all to threaten the Republicans if they didn't take care of the shit. When maybe 2 years ago, whenever they were going through that, getting rid of the mandate, because that's really what Trump was concerned with at the time, and they wouldn't do it, so he had to do an executive order to get rid of it. But he threatened it with Medicare for all. He's the reason that COVID testing and COVID hospitalizations are actually covered now, at least until I think it's about to expire. But he was the one who fought for that. He actually tried to fight for UBI. And I remember the statement that he said, and he was making fun of Pence, but he said, it looks like people who have money are able to take care of themselves, and the people who don't are screwed. And I don't think that's fair. So no matter how you feel about COVID itself, his approach is still a very legitimate one, which is the approach we should be taking in all situations. But so the critiques of Trump regarding COVID, I didn't find fair. I think that they were using Trump to hyper politicize the issue because of hydroxychloroquine and zinc being so successful and also being so cheap, and the patents not being owned by the United States or any pharmaceutical company in the United States. So they bullied him into submission to a certain degree. But that particular legislation, that executive order didn't actually come as a surprise, because he's been decently good on this particular issue. It's weird because so if you're going to tell me I have to have ACA regardless, I'm very fortunate. I'm retired military, so I have TRICARE. But if you were going to tell me I have to have ACA, but at least under Trump, if I can't afford it, I won't be penalized for not being able to afford it, I will take that.
Yeah, sounds crazy, right?
Prescription drugs. Go ahead.
Yeah, it sounds crazy. Like, you're going to pay less for prescription drugs. You're not going to get penalized for not having insurance. It's insane to me. And you're going to have the choice to deal with what you just said. You know, he's the one that hyped up hydroxychloroquine. Since then, we've found out about steroid treatments, and they're still acting like we need to lock down
interferon alpha 2b. That's the drug that Cuba used. They've been using it for 40 years, but so it's tested, battle tested, and what it does is interferon is a molecule. It's actually the molecule that this specific virus targets, and it reduces it, which allows that virus to replicate. Interferon, when you inject it, it creates an excess of the molecule, and so basically, if the virus attacks you, your body allows it to come into the system, so you get the antibodies. But then, when it tries to replicate, the interferon disallows it to do so, and it's been Cuba literally said, "We're good, we're fine," and in 40 other countries, including a lot of the African nations, use it, and that's how they've gotten it all under control. And that's why you heard the president of Madagascar came out and said, "We're about to pull out the WHO because y'all are full of shit."
And another thing he did was pull us out of the WHO. So that gets me to the next question. These people at the top, the predator class, they're outwardly running Joe Biden, a man who's not only visibly senile, but is an establishment puppet. We talked about his segregationist. This is a guy that stood on the floor when Bill Barr was going to be the youngest attorney general under Bush 1, and basically gave him a Angelo in front of everybody, as they didn't even vote on it. It was a yays and nays. Oh, the yays have it. We love you, Bill Barr. He covered up Pakistan's role in 9/11, the $100,000 wire transfer from General Mahmoud Ahmed that was facilitated by Omar Saeed Sheikh, a guy who's walking free, by the way. Oh, you thought the guy that got convicted of... Oh, yeah. Beheading Daniel Pearl, they let him walk 3 months ago. They said, you know what? No big deal. Omar Saeed Sheikh, check it out. But he's not an intelligence asset. That's my point. There's no intelligence connections here that the Pakistani ISI guy was meeting with Porter Goss and Bob Graham on the morning of 9/11, and they do the initial investigation.
Bro, Pakistan is so... Pakistan's basically, for lack of a better word, they've basically been our bitch for their entire existence. Mm-hmm. It's kind of hilarious. I mean, I feel bad for the people of Pakistan because they're kind of caught they're caught in between all this bullshit. Mm-hmm. Same thing that's going on in Kashmir. People wanted to get mad because they said that what Modi in the parliament did was illegal, but they actually look at the law. You know what? I don't know if you get into that side of the politics because I understand the international politics is crazy, but basically, to simplify it, the law said, hey, you can't stop people from buying land in Kashmir just because they're not Muslim. You can't stop people from buying land in Kashmir just because they're Hindu. You can't just bomb people when you don't want them to be there. That's not okay either. The oligarchs can't run the system like it has been doing. Can't do that either. And by the way, Kashmir has always been a part of India. And Pakistan's grand master plan was to bomb them to hell until they asked India to let us be a part of Pakistan just so we can stop being bombed. That was their grand master plan. The damn prime minister of Pakistan literally said, we have 40,000 proud jihadists in Kashmir right now. And that was it was so insane to me because why is the president and all of our military and the secretaries so infatuated with a man who is quote unquote pro-jihadi by his own admission, and yet we pretend like half the operations we're conducting in the Middle East is because of quote unquote jihadis? Which one is it?
Yeah. Well, again, it's almost like it's a great question, but it's almost like, I don't know, the OPCW leaks come out, right? And for those that don't know, that proves beyond a reasonable doubt there was no chemical attack in Douma. Now, we had a president a week before that attack twice saying we need to leave Syria and that it was time. Then that happens, missiles go...
Yes, bro! Oh, my God! Dog.
Now, listen.
I didn't have a big channel back then, but when I tell y'all, I said, oh, shit, the intelligence community is about to nix that. Mm-hmm. I said, because I know, bro. I know the intelligence community. I used to work in military intelligence. My brother left intelligence because of all the shit he saw. I knew. I'm they're not going. He's literally telling the CIA, you're done. And the CIA doesn't play that shit when it comes to the president.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, so we wait. We didn't really have to wait. I mean, I give OAN all the credit in the world for sending their journalists down there where there was no attack, where he actually ran into one of the kids. Yes, exactly, Jordan Pearson. And he ran into one of the kids that was supposedly in the video, and he was fine. He said they dumped water on him. They took the screaming kids in, made the film. Now, you get the leaks from WikiLeaks. Remember, this, again, is a president that ran on loving the WikiLeaks. Can't get enough of the WikiLeaks. You see the WikiLeaks.
WikiLeaks is tremendous. Oh, a lot to the WikiLeaks.
And then they release documentation that proves no chemical attack happened. You get to the UN hearings on it, and what's the administration's position before the UN? It's Russian propaganda. So at one end, you're sitting there going, there was no, telling the truth about Russia Gate and all that stuff, but then you use the same canard to say, no, that chemical attack really happened. It's frustrating because it shows you on some level, this always goes beyond the presidency of the United States. So, I mean, does Joey B, Sleepy Joe, does he have is Condoleezza Rice the dark horse? How do you see this playing out? Does he even make it to election day?
So I think that people should kind of really understand how racist Joe Biden is. I think so. Trump is a racist, but only, my grandmother put it very, very lovely. She said, Trump is racist, but only in the traditional sense that he doesn't really give a shit about black people, but he won't go out of his way to hurt black people simply because they're black. So it's racial apathy. However, with that being said, Joe Biden is actively racist. Literally, it's the difference between voting for a racist. Okay, so that's not really new as far as presidents are concerned, if we're being honest. But comparing him to a literal segregationist, this ain't a segregationist from 1960, bro. This is a segregationist from 1990. This is, what I'm saying? This ain't when my grandma was a little girl and she had to go. No. This is when I was born, after I was born. Yeah. This is the man who said while he was, as a senator, bro, as a senator, I don't want my kids growing up in a racial jungle. So he will not be picking a black woman like people think. He won't do it because there's something in him that will not allow him to do it. Because otherwise, say if you were going to go with a Democrat and you truly wanted a black woman and you wanted someone who, let's be honest, can actually win you the black vote, you would go with Barbara Lee and it wouldn't even be a question. Because for Barbara Lee has, in my opinion, kind of personality or brand politics issues. So she kind of tries to, she associates herself with the wrong people. Mm-hmm. But what is indisputable is the fact that she is the only one in all of Congress, still to this day, that got both Afghanistan and Iraq right, and Yemen the first time, and has always been right on Saudi Arabia, and has always been right on Israel, Palestine.
Yeah, but they don't want somebody like that.
Exactly.
I mean, come on. That's the other thing. It's never about right or left. It's who can give us what we want, who can keep us in these wars in the Middle East, who can continue to let us dominate Eurasia, who can keep the public docile. I mean, listen, man. I mean, let's break politics right now. To me, what's going on, this is a transhumanist agenda at this point. I think this is literally getting people up for that UBI where, and this is where we might differ, where there's no sense of worth. I think that a UBI is dangerous because if we really were invested in this country, we'd be restructuring it. Okay, the last time
I agree with that.
The last time that we were really, and I'm not talking about we're going to defund the police and reimagine the police. I think that's dangerous too. Demilitarize the police all day. Get the tanks out their hands. Get the army weapons out their hands. Absolutely hold them accountable. Find ways that when police brutality does exist, you get the trial somewhere else. So you don't have that cronyism.
Yeah, that's what you have to do if you're a paralegal in the military and you say your sergeant tries to give you an Article 15 because of literally we're basically paralegals are the attorneys. There are JAG officers, but basically we do all the work. So, and they're going to tell the JAG officer what they want to happen to. So you have to actually be tried. You're supposed to legally be tried in a different jurisdiction.
100%.
So not even in the same unit, not even in the same division. You have to go to a different division to get tried. You're supposed to anyway.
As you should, because that's the way that you at least avoid some of the corruption and the cronyism. You're never going to get away with getting rid of 100% corruption. That's the other thing. We don't ever want to live in a utopian society because that means we're all mush, but that's where it's moving. Now, on the other end of that, let's restructure the country instead of just a broken highway system. Why don't we have maglev train systems instead of like that's the one part of the Green Deal I could definitely get down with, where I'm thinking to myself, well, you have those hubs in cities. You're going to have to build that infrastructure. We're talking about like a works progress administration on crack. All right. So you could literally give so many people jobs at the same time that new technology would bear the, I don't know, empowerment instead of enslavement of technology by using automation to empower humanity to build them alongside that. But again, that's not what they want. And I don't want to see a Hunger Games style society where, you know, in big cities, Spot the DARPA robot or its grandson is telling me to fucking social distance 65 feet from somebody because that's how far this virus is. I mean, it's...
Yeah, that shit's... It's... Whoo, bro. Don't get me started on that.
But it's all here. It's, I mean, right now, we got to start looking at it because right now, this is all here. So how are we going to deal with these robots instead of pushing back on, well, look how many people are on these UBI. They're really not important. You know, all these people aren't doing anything. You know, it gives that idea that we are overpopulated and that human beings aren't necessary and maybe we should be at 2 billion.
So let me, I want to offer you this because I do agree with you that there was, and I brought this up in my coverage of UBI during the election, there were some sinister undertones being pushed about UBI, or behind UBI, I should say. Like Yang is a technocrat, right? I mean, people might think he's a nice guy, and I'm sure he is, but he's a technocrat. And he's very much so numbers-based. And when you have people like that, they can be particularly dangerous. So when you're talking about universal basic income, there are two things. You cannot have universal basic income in a vacuum because of everything you just said. I'm an advocate for both universal basic income and a federal jobs guarantee, right? Because I feel like one cannot work without the other because of, if we look at the situation we're in right now, the economy would not be sank if we have universal basic income. But I can personally attest to what I believe is a fallacy that people will all of a sudden just not want to be engaged in any sort of meaningful work if they do have UBI, because I'm a recipient of military retirement. Basically, for my entire adult life, I have been, because I retired from the military at about 22, 23 years old. So I get about $1,100 to $1,200 a month, depending on the raise that year. And because of that, I was actually able to not become a wage slave, if you will. I didn't have to work 2 or 3 jobs while I was in college. I was able to actually invest that time into growing clubs, growing my personal brand, honing and sharpening my skills, learning different languages. And I was then able to take all of that and then actually take a chance on myself. Whereas if I didn't have that, I would have been forced to go to law school, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But you know what happens when you go to a top 5, top 10 law school, which is where I was headed. You become a slave to your degree.
I was going to say you were going to become a demon.
Basically, that's what Jared told me from the law school. He was like, bro, don't go.
Yeah, no, you become a professional liar, Niko. All right, so let me give you a counter argument to that, okay? Now, I would argue, number one, you did military, you deserve that, you earned it, you knew that if you did certain things and got there that you would get that payment. So number one, you worked for it, okay? So there's some sense of achievement and accomplishment. That's one. Number two, in a situation, and I'm glad it's right around that UBI number of $12,000 to $14,000 over the year, right? A guy like me, who isn't going to take the mandatory vaccine or jump through some of the paperwork or possibly have to do a checkup or whatever, isn't going to get that money. So I'm going to be 14 grand behind everybody else. And if everyone's...
So that's a possibility.
Yeah.
But that's once again why you have to, in my opinion, have it in conjunction. Because if you have the federal jobs guarantee, like what you were talking about with the infrastructure, and it is state-based, because I agree that our government is just our federal government's out of control. It's out of control might be an understatement, actually. To such a degree that the states are acting on behalf of the federal government and they don't even realize that they still think that they're doing what they want to do, which is kind of funny when you think about some of the states that are engaging in this behavior. But so I do agree. If you have a situation like that where maybe you don't want to take first of all, if there was a mandatory vaccine, I'd be on the streets. So
that's what I'm saying. But some people won't. And especially those, all right, let me give you another example. Like, And I mean, these are real world examples. My sister was working at a restaurant where, in 30 hours a week after tips, you pull in, $800-900. Pretty good for a single mom.
You can make some good money.
You could do all right. You know what I'm saying? 30 hours a week, and we live in the same house. She's got the downstairs, I've got the upstairs. Now in this situation, that restaurant's done. It's gone full takeout. There are none of that. Now in the very beginning, she did get the unemployment. Now she got that $600 bonus on top of it. She's made more money now not working, and that's a bust your ass job for the past 3 months plus so far, to the point where she actually bought a car, Niko. Now, what is her motivation to now? First of all, her job's not there anymore, right? It's not.
Yeah.
Like now the job that they've offered for the people that want to come back is a job that pays less than $12 an hour. So let's do the math on that. After taxes, clearing it, what's that going to be after 40 hours when she was working 30 and clearing?
She's going to lose more money, like by a lot.
She'll lose 60% of what she was making. Forget about what she's making now. She'll lose 70 to 80% of it. So it's almost like putting you on this forced dole system, so that maybe necessarily it's that you don't want to not work, but it's like, holy shit, they've sure incentivized me not to work. You get it?
Yeah. So funny story. My wife actually went through the exact same thing down here in Florida. And God knows we've been going through it out here. It's all been super politicized. And so the restaurant industry and just the tourism industry in general, or the service industry in general, has been going through it. Now, same scenario. And she was getting paid about like 13 to 14 an hour before that. So she got that plus the $600 a week. Now, my wife actually gets depressed if she doesn't feel useful. This is just how she is as a person. Obviously, not everybody is like that. But my wife and most of the people that I personally associate myself with are like that. So she actually took that time to learn video production and photo editing and things like that. So basically the whole creative space, she's been taking the time to learn it and master it, to the point where she actually produces my show now. And we were able to get afforded opportunities because they were like, oh, well, we are bringing people in that look studio, like they have studio quality shows. I'm like, oh, hold on. What did you say? They're like, studio. You're in the studio, right? I'm like, oh, yeah. We're definitely in the studio for sure. But so the freedom to not have to worry about being a slave to her job allowed her to actually do what she wants to do rather than what she has to do in order to pay the bills. So I agree with you that there are scenarios where that could be a bad thing, but I also think that those people would spend their money badly anyway. Those people would not be meaningful contributors to society anyway. Like if we gave them a long period of time.
Meaningful contributors to society. You're playing into those Ted Turner talking points. That's my point. Listen, you and I might sit there.
But my definition of meaningful contribution to society isn't defined as everybody else's, because I don't believe that people think that sometimes that we're just these dirty YouTubers who don't do shit for society. I think that we have pretty important jobs. I think that somebody got to tell the truth out here. Yeah. And then someone could take that truth to their job, talk to their coworker. Justin Jackson, one of my good friends, he plays for the LA Chargers. When he first, and he was a starter for the LA Chargers, but nobody knew him as the starter for the LA Chargers because he just didn't have the name yet. He had only been there for 2 years, and he was a running back. And, the helmets, you can't see people's faces.
Yeah.
But I said, bro, I feel like you have a really good understanding of this politics. Come on the show and do an interview. And that was his first interview. Obviously, it was a little shaky. He was learning. But over time, he kept being a truth teller within that league and within Twitter. And now the NFL is turning him like, yo, what do we do? And he's like I said, he's only been there for 3 years. Mm-hmm. But because of him being able to do, obviously, financially, whatever hell he wants to do after the football season's over and not being threatened because he had some guarantees, like that allowed him to do what helped him feel fulfilled. And that in turn has positive that, of course, we can't quantify or really calculate. But when people can have the freedom to fulfill what they want to do, what's truly important to them, then we actually can see some, in my opinion, meaningful change. And some people actually become woke and have the free time to learn about the stuff that you or I have a little bit more free time to learn about because of us really owning our labor.
Well, I just say this, too. You know, even in there, you know, there was some challenges in him getting to the NFL. Like, I'm just saying, a lot of these people that make it, they're gonna, like if you didn't have that money, brother, I know that you would have made it no matter what. You know what I'm saying? There's always there's you know, there's a burning desire in people, and I think what people have to understand is you're not going to make it on the first run. It's not like you win the lottery on the thing you love right out of the gates. In fact, you can actually have some great success with the thing you love, and then all of a sudden, not so much success, and you still got to keep climbing and barreling through, and there's always going to be barriers, and that's life. Like until the day that you breathe that last breath, if you want something, you got to keep trying to take it and push forward. And
I 100% agree.
And I think that's why it's good to have these conversations, you know, instead of like these weird Facebook battles you have in, like, Niko and I have never met, but like people I've actually met, if I said something right here, it could get an ugly back and forth, cursing each other, name-calling battle. And it's these type of long dialogue conversations where you can listen to other perspectives, respect another person's opinion, and then take some time back and think about it a little bit and say, you know, is that a problem? Can we move forward? Can we find a compromise?
100%. Oh, man, I got into a back and forth on Facebook yesterday where somebody felt like it was okay to defend the KKK.
Oh.
To prove your point. I'm not joking. I'm dead. It was the weirdest. So I'm in the camp of, just regarding the protest, BLM is a 501c4. Both things are true. BLM, Black Lives Matter, is a 501c4 basically owned by the Democratic Party that is being used at the national level to co-opt the message of the BLM message, which is Black Lives Matter. It is not a movement. It is not a political revolution. It is, bitch, I'm born black. I have no choice. My life has to matter as much as everybody else's, or I won't make it. And people are not able to dichotomize the two because of partisan politics, right? Mm-hmm. I also know, because Black Lives Matter, and I do research on who actually has been assisting my life, Antifa, the national level organization, is full of shit. Because I was following Ferguson extremely close, and y'all were nowhere to be found. I was in New York. I knew people in Baltimore. There was even an ordeal in Texas that the Black Panthers showed up to. A lot of other organizations showed up to. Antifa was nowhere to be found. I was at Standing Rock when a woman lost her arm to those damn fascist, authoritarian, militarized bitches. Like, they're bitches. They were bitches. They were only firing at the Native Americans because they knew they were peaceful. I was there whenever a young woman lost her eyes. Antifa was nowhere to be found. Antifa just so happens to show up when Donald Trump gets elected. Yeah. That is super convenient. And people are like, well, you don't know the history of Antifa. No, I know the history of Antifa. I know that they were originally created to go against Hitler 40 years ago, and then somehow they decided to take a whole hiatus. They didn't take a hiatus. They're just not a thing anymore. And I also know that the CIA is very, very unoriginal. I do know that too. And they literally are so lazy that when they wanted to convince the world that Russia hacked Podesta's emails, they decided to use the name Gucci for 2.0, which is a hacker that was actually a hacker who actually hacked something because they couldn't think of anybody else. Like, they were like, oh, we have to sell it to make it more believable. Gucci for 2.0. That's what they came up with. That is the most CIA level of laziness. People think these people they're not smart. They're just well connected, and being corrupt and well connected kind of covers down for the dumbacity within the organization. Because you can cover your stupidity. But some stuff you just can't. When they cast their net a little bit too wide, they're stupid, which is why the Russiagate situation was so obvious. But my point is, when we can sit down and have conversations because genuinely we believe in arriving to the same destination. Some people believe that they want to arrive to the same destination, but that's not really what they want. Some people say that all lives matter, but they only say that when it's time to attack the phrase Black Lives Matter. Like, if we don't have the same goals, then we're never going to reach the same destination. But for those type of people on the other side of the fence that can't have the conversations like we're having today, it's because they're talking with their egos. Their goals are driven by their egos. And although there's a healthy amount of ego in every level of ambition, when ego is literally the determining factor, the alpha and the omega for everything you do, then the conversation would be pointless no matter what. So I agree with you. I think that more of these conversations need to be had because that's how we flesh out the details.
Yeah, it's
Because
listen, it's the only way.
I want, or everything you want, or anything everybody wants, but we can sit down, and if we both agree on the destination, then we can, argue about which car we take to get there.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing is, if you think you have all the answers and there is no dissent, who really gets to decide anyway? And how do you decide that I'm never going to be wrong, which is an impossibility as a human, unless maybe you have Neuralink by Elon Musk. I want to tell people about Rokfin because both of us are on there, and that's where you can find Mikasa, Sukasa most of the time. I know you live stream constantly over on Rokfin. Why is that platform important to you? I've shared with my audience why it's so important to me.
So for everybody, I'm on Rokfin as well. Every Thursday from 5 p.m. Eastern to 7 p.m. Eastern, I do a Rokfin Premium exclusive show, and we have a great time. Rokfin for me is particularly special. They will have a special place because I went from being targeted by YouTube and basically being unable to grow on YouTube, not because of the merits of my words, but because other leftists were making sure it never happened. Other leftists were taking my arguments. Literally taking my arguments verbatim, taking my stories verbatim. I was the one who broke the information on the Hillary Clinton Victory Fund. A lot of people didn't know that until very recently. I was also the one who started the DNC fraud lawsuit. And people were literally taking my lawsuit and grifting off of it without ever once mentioning my name. Friends, quote unquote, were taking interviews they were like, oh, do you know the person who started this? Oh, I can talk about it. So I was getting undercut because everybody kind of could see at the time that, wow, he's really well connected. Okay, he really knows his shit. Well, I don't want him to be competition for me eventually. And so when you combine that with the fact that I was going against the grain on Russiagate, I was going against the grain on Hillary Clinton. I was a black man who hates the Democratic Party, disliked Hillary Clinton, and even worse than all that, I demanded accountability. And those are factors that do not really go well with progressives, believe it or not. So it took a while to grow, but then whenever the election came around, I actually hit a crazy spike. The 2020 elections, because I was the only black person at the time in the progressive community that was telling the truth about Kamala Harris in great detail, by the way. Also, I was telling the truth about even Bernie. I was telling the truth about it. I was telling the truth about, what I'm saying? It wasn't like I was scathing or anything like that. I was just honest. And that is, that was kind of it was new and refreshing for leftists who are actually anti-imperialist leftists like myself. Mm-hmm. And so once I hit 38,000 and 35,000, the views that we were getting actually at the time were, good God. They said that what we were doing wasn't even supposed to be possible, basically, on how with the growth. Yeah, you can get a viral video sometimes. Yeah, you can grow fast sometimes through consistency, but you never grow and have people remain there. In our CPM, bro, which you understand that language, it was like $10.
Yeah. I've been before that. I had a $14 CPM at one point. And
that's why they found you. That's why they found you, bro. That's for real. Because a YouTube guy found me in San Francisco while I was speaking at a Tulsi event to tell me specifically, they're going after you, bro. He said that he was getting arguments with his supervisor every single day over what they were doing because they get assigned different channels to review. And so he was arguing with his supervisor every day over what he was doing on my channel. And he warned me, and I did a video about it. I said, they're about to come down on all of independent media, and they're shifting the algorithms so that if the video auto plays, it'll go to mainstream. It's not going to go to you guys anymore. Y'all not going to appear in the suggested videos anymore. I was like, well, what about the forced unsubscriptions? He's like, yeah, that's part of it too. He said, they're going after you. Mm-hmm. And so as I just started this network, we were finally finding some success. This now became my livelihood because we had become so successful. I was getting hit again, basically. And, it started to look kind of bleak because I don't want people to watch me because I'm right or because I make money off of it. Or no, excuse me. Because I don't want them to watch me because I make money off it. I don't want to watch it because I want to be popular. I could be popular doing something else. I was a pretty damn good rapper back in the day, Jason. I don't know if you know this, but I was. But in all seriousness, because I was right for the right reasons, and because if you watch the wrong person, then you will continue to do the wrong thing and believe the wrong thing. And those people will continue to steer you wrong because you're paying them to. Why would they change? So enters Rokfin. out of literally nowhere. So I was immediately skeptical. Okay. Until I talked to Nick. So shout out to Nick. And I had a little email back and forth with Martin, and I was still skeptical because people had made me promises in the past, and they were like, "Well, look, we've been a fan of your show. We've been a fan of Jimmy and the Combo Couch." I'm like, "Okay, so you're saying all the right names," and so I thought like they clearly know what content they're going for and what type of personalities they're going for. But then you have to worry about necessarily, just because I run a business myself, you have to worry about somebody who has a business mind. And then I found out, of course, as you probably know, Martin, the founder of Rokfin, literally got rich off of creating an alternative platform for sports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, so he's done this before. And, you know, they said, this is what the Ray token is. They didn't oversell anything to me. They didn't overpromise anything to me, but they said, this is what we're going to give you the ability to do. This is all we ask for in return. And set slowly but surely. And this is, by the way, and Jason can attest to this, it's not like I was, as a creator, making them do it by themselves. I tried to advertise it because I believed in it too. Yes. So it wasn't like I was asking for everything and they were asked for nothing, or vice versa. It was give and take for both of us. And they kept up their end of the bargain. They marketed my shows on Facebook. They marketed my shows on IG. When they started seeing how well we were doing, they were like, "Yo, do you want an exclusive show?" I was like, "What do you mean?" It's like, no, like a channel, like, or a show every single day that we promote exclusively, send out emails to promote and make sure that people will be there.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, let's do it. And we did it, and we were successful, and we renegotiated, and we're back to the same. We're back 5 to 7, and then some. And they didn't just treat me like that, by the way. They treated my team the same way. So it was not only about taking somebody who had a platform and profiting off of them. It was about helping other people grow as well because of our goals. And obviously there's a profit motive, but even with the sports side, if you listen to the reason why Martin and his brother started Flow Sports, it was a very similar reason to why we do what we do. Mm-hmm. When you're passionate about something, you want to be able to do it the way you want to do it.
And let's talk about that just for a second, because the financial aspect of it, where most of these other alt platforms, in my opinion, kind of fail. And it's not to diss them or anything like that, but there is no real cash involvement, right? Steam It, DTube, you could talk about DLive, Minds, etc. You know, I guess that people could plunk money into it, but to get the premium content, basically somebody says, look, I'm going to have a Netflix type subscription. It's costing me $10 a month. Every time that happens, we're burning these Ray tokens, and that goes into whoever endorses wallet. But for $10, it's not just Jason Burmis, or it's not just Niko House. It's Jason Burmis, Niko House, Jimmy Dore, Ben Askren, John Fitch, Graham Elwood, Ron Placone, the Convo Couch, Kim Iverson, and the list goes on.
Mike Cernovich, Harlan's Media, left, right, middle, indifferent, sports. What do you want? And it's not bullshit premium content, bro. It's really not. If you watch some of the premium videos that these people put out there, it's stuff that they've always wanted to do. But the way that YouTube works now, they don't know if it will be worth, because YouTube, you got to toil way too much to get minimal return.
Mm-hmm. Unless you've got like a cat video channel, or you're cooking, or it's all comedy and fluff. There is no room, unfortunately, for independent thought, and that's now gone even outside of creators and into doctors, and then now this medical martial law. And again, I'm telling
you, History Channel they got hit.
Yeah,
the History Channel had to go to Maven, which is another platform that I'm part of now. And they actually helped me build out my website. But the History Channel had to go to Maven because Maven, as far as articles and publications are concerned, they wanted to achieve a very similar goal that Rokfin wanted to do as far as the broadcasts are concerned. Mm-hmm. So like it's a thing. And I've been saying that one day somebody with the savvy in the network is going to give YouTube hell.
I hope so.
Because it's just the world autocorrects, man. There is something, people don't believe in God, and I understand if you don't believe in God. I believe in God. I'm a very spiritual person. But there is something greater. There's a greater conscious that we are all a part of, that sometimes when our conscious won't cooperate, and when our conscious is not allowing us to cooperate for whatever reason, then the subconscious of whatever that greater entity is kicks in, and shit autocorrects. Now, sometimes we might not like the result of that because it could be just somebody got to go. And that might not be a comfortable idea, but that's how the world is. Cryptocurrency was it was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And the way it happened was so accidental, but then it ended up being so successful that there is not really a way to genuinely control it because so many self-serving interests are the ones who want to control it. So yeah, you might see JP Morgan and Chase invest into blockchain technology all of a sudden because they finally, after years, realized how profitable it was. But guess what? New York, because of the stock market and the fact that there's still a lot of selfish billionaires and millionaires who need to profit off of that, it's illegal to trade cryptocurrency. I don't know if you know that.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
So it's like, hold on. Why would you do that? You can make money off it, but then you can make money off of it too. Well, isn't that a good thing? No. We don't want that. Well, so the world autocorrects, and that's where Rokfin, platforms like Rokfin, come into play.
Well, I like the Rokfin angle, but now that you see PayPal and Venmo taking out crypto wallets that are going to be built into the platform, it autocorrects for evil too. Yeah, I know. Listen, this is a great conversation. We've been talking for an hour. You can follow him at Niko CSFB. How else can people support you, my friend?
You can find me at Niko CSFB on Twitter. You can obviously find me on Rokfin. You can find me on YouTube at the MCSC Network, or just type in Niko House and IKO. You can also find me at the independent, all one word, .io/the MCSC Network. That's where you can follow all of our publications, our content, videos, articles, all that good stuff.
Niko, it was a pleasure. Thanks for spending an hour with me. We got to do it again, okay?
No problem. Definitely, bro.
All right. Thank you, man. We'll talk later. All right. That was Niko House, everybody. And again, we talk to all voices here. Left, right, in between. That's how we do it. Remember, fully demonetized on the platform. $5, $10, $15 means the world to me. We're almost at the end of the month. I'd like to at least break that 4K margin. Make sure you're checking out my documentary films, Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and Shade the Motion Picture. They're available free right here, right now in the playlist section. Thumbs the video up, subscribe, and share. You can support Niko or I and many other creators over at Rokfin right now. There will be an exclusive live free video, so you just create a free account. You can do that tomorrow at noon, Tuesdays at noon, every single time. I absolutely love you. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you on the flip side.